This tutorial is going to go over how to use mesh lights, specifically how to turn a image into a light source. I'm going to use a movie poster as the example, and I'm just going to model a simple frame for my poster. It will work if you don't have a frame, but I think it looks a little bit nicer to have a frame for a nice backlit movie poster. You would have to UV the frame and texture it as you normally would. However, where the poster is, we're just going to keep this in Maya. And I'm going to do an extract face operation, which you can find under Edit Mesh, Extract, or Shift right click. Going to do a little organization and just take that out of the group and delete their history. And poster and frame. I'm going to select the poster, and I'm going to right click and assign an AI standard surface. And I'm going to search for my movie poster and put it in the base color. If you don't see anything, make sure you hit 6 on your keyboard, and you'll notice that the UVs are not quite right. I'm only seeing a bottom corner of my poster. So I'm going to open up my UV editing menu, and make sure checkerboard is turned off, and make sure that your view textures is turned on. I'm going to go to UV shell, hold D and V to snap my vertex to the bottom corner of my shell, and then hold X to snap it to the grid. And then use my scale tool to scale up. I don't want any overlap, so I'm just going to scale down a very little bit. You can use other snapping tools to make sure it's perfect, but this is close enough. Your UVs will not match the shape of your object. That's okay because we are starting with a rectangular texture going on to a missized. The texture should be square, but since it's a rectangle, our UVs won't match. But that's okay, as long as it displays correctly. And right now, this is just a normal texture mapped onto a plane. It is not a light source. And I want to turn it into a light source to help light my scene. I'm going to come up to Arnold, Lights, and Mesh Light. This will make your poster disappear, and in its place you will have this red wireframe, and in Maya that red wireframe means it's a light. If we open up our outliner, you can see we have our poster object that's invisible, and our light poster, which is our new light source. If we delete the light, the original mesh will return. If we render right now, nothing will happen. I will see my frame. That is because this light is illuminating just the inside of the frame. However, I will not see my entire poster. Select the light again, and in the light attributes, go to color and load in the exact same image that you used for the base color. You still won't see anything if you render, and that's because you have to turn on this button that says Light Visible. And now when you do it, you will start to see your poster. And depending on the scale of your scene, you might have to turn your intensity up just a little bit and do 1 and 1.5 or 2. I'm in centimeters. If you're in meters, you might have to bring this up a lot more. It will max out at 10, however you can type whatever number you need in here. And it can be a nice way to get a little extra light, especially colored light, in your scene. You can turn any mesh into a mesh light. I have a very simple shape. It was a sphere I beveled all the edges and then deleted the larger rectangular faces and extruded out. This is going to be a mesh that goes around my light, and I'm just going to create a sphere, move it up, scale it to however big I want, and I'm going to turn it into a mesh light. Now by default, again, it won't do much. And here it is, it's not doing anything at all. So we can definitely turn up that intensity. And now we can see we are getting some light effects from the sphere light. However, I want to do more than just a solid color. So instead of changing the color or adding an image to it, I'm going to click on this checkerboard, and in this menu I'm going to click on ramp, which is a gradient texture. By default it will be black to white. You can click on these circles and pick whatever color you want. And wherever you click, you can add another color. At the top, you can have your gradient go in different directions. U and V or X and Y, or you could have diagonals or a lot of different type of ramps. And when I render it out, you will see that I am now getting a very different effect with different color lights. I'm going to make my light visible so I can actually see what is causing that light. And I'm going to click on where the checkerboard used to be to get back to my ramp settings. And down here you can change some attributes. You can make it a little bit noisier. You can change how it is being calculated, and you can get some pretty cool shapes. It can be a fun way to have some less than normal looking lighting, and you don't have to have it visible. Without visible, you can definitely get see more of the lighting effects, which can be nice. So here it is rendered. I have a brass AI preset material on this mesh. I have a sphere with a water texture, which is also a preset. My sphere mesh light with a ramp put into the color. And I also have a sky dome with a ramp texture assigned to it as well to get some interesting colors and reflections in the brass. And you can have some nice lighting effects without too much work. Another effect that can be nice to add is a fog effect. To do so, I'm going to open the Maya render settings, come over to the the Arnold renderer tab, and open up the environment. You have the atmosphere input here with a checkerboard, and when you click on it, you have three options, and I'm going to choose AI fog. And then when you do a render, you will have a fog effect. You can change the color of the fog. Distance is how much it is. And depending on your scale of the scene, you might need to have a very small number or a very large number. And it gives you a nice atmospheric look. In the same location, you can also add a AI atmosphere volume. By default, when you hit play, it will not have any effect. That's because the density is turned down to 0. So, put in a number, I just put in 1, and it will give you some light ray effects. depending on how bright your light is and what kind of mesh you have blocking it, you may have more or less light rays, but it is a very nice effect. You do need to make sure that your light is set up for Arnold. Not all of the lights by default will have an Arnold tab. If it was made under the Arnold tab, it will be fine. So the mesh light by default will, I believe most of the lights in the Create tab will work with Arnold, but do double check. Not all of them will have a volume option.